Okay. Well, here we are again. My name is Joan Livingston. I'm the managing editor of the Taos News. We've had 4 other political forums so far this year, 2 for the town elections, and in advance of the primary, 1 each for the Taos County Commission and Sheriff. In that Sheriff's Forum, we had 9 candidates, 8 for the Democratic Party and 1 for the Republican Party. Tonight we have 2. To my left is Jerry L. Hogrefe, Democrat.
Hi.
And to my right is Ronald G. Móntez, Republican. The Taos County Republican Party selected Ron to be the candidate after the passing of Rick Trujillo. In a little while, I will let Ron and Jerry tell you about themselves. Tonight's forum is sponsored by the Taos News, Taos County Chamber of Commerce, and Kit Carson Electric Cooperative. And once again, our colleagues at TV 22 will be live streaming their forum. We've been doing, since the very first forum, we've been doing a lot more work with them. The video will be available to view on taos22.com, Channel 22, and taosnews.com. So here are the rules for tonight's forum. Candidates will have 2 minutes to give an introduction and 2 minutes for a closing statement. They will also have 2 minutes to answer questions. That way it makes it easy for everyone. Susan Cady from the Taos County Chamber of Commerce is once again our timer, and will use her iPad there to let the candidates know when their time is up. The editorial team at the Taos News developed the questions. In some, both candidates will be asked the same question. Some will be chosen randomly. In 2 rounds, the candidates will be asked questions, or actually it's in 1 round, the candidates will be asked questions directly about them. By the way, no one knows the questions or topics ahead of time. We figure these candidates have worked many years in law enforcement and have handled much tougher situations than this. And they're also not running for governor. Finally, to keep the forum moving, we ask that you hold your applause until the end of the evening. Likewise, we want this forum to have a friendly and respectful atmosphere as we did at our previous forums. So let's begin with the intros. H comes before M in the alphabet, so Jerry will be first. Then Ron will be first on the closing statement. In fairness, I will also change who answers first on each round. So Jerry, it's your turn.
Thank you, Joan. Okay, I'm excited to be here tonight. I want to start by telling you a little bit about myself. As you know, I'm Jerry Hogrefe. I'm your Democratic candidate for Taos County Sheriff. I turn 48 years old tomorrow. Can you guess what my birthday wish is going to be? I'm a lifetime Democrat. I've been married to this wonderful lady, Susan Hogrefe, for 26 years. She's my everything. I'm honored that my son, Joel, is here tonight, and his new bride, Sasha, is here tonight. Other than my in-laws, I have no other family here in New Mexico, so I can count them on one hand, and I think that's a positive thing for your next sheriff to have. I want to tell you a little bit about my education. My education started in Oklahoma, where I was born and raised. I've lived here in New Mexico, as I said, 30 years now. This is my home, make no mistake about that. I have over 3,000 hours of law enforcement training and experience. I hold an executive level certification as a police officer. That's the highest you can obtain in New Mexico, by the way. I've also been a firefighter for 25 years, a volunteer firefighter. I served with the Wheeler Peak Fire Department, and I still do help them with events and so forth. I'm also an EMT of 29 years, and I'm very proud of that fact and the 2 life-saving awards that I've received throughout my career in that. In 2009, I enrolled at National American University in business and incident management courses. I completed those, and I did that on my own to better myself as a manager and a director of the Red River Marshal's Office, and more for event planning and incident command staffing. I'm really anxious to answer the questions tonight. I really, really, truly am, and I hope that the people will be able to ask things of us. I'm going to tell you more about myself in my closing statement, and I'm going to give you a lot of data and numbers about the Sheriff's Department tonight because I've done my homework and you deserve to know the truth. Thank you. She said no clapping. See, I'm already enforcing the rules.
Good evening. I'm Ronald, Móntez, Republican candidate for Taos County Sheriff. First of all, I'd like to thank Taos News, Kit Carson Electric, and local television, Chamber of Commerce, for putting on this event. I'm a New Mexico certified law enforcement officer. I also obtained a New Mexico certification for E911 dispatch. In the 25 years as a law enforcement officer, I've served as a patrolman, a sergeant, a lieutenant, and a captain. I was promoted to captain in March of 2003 and was given the title of assistant chief. I retired in January 2004. I returned to the police department as a police dispatcher, and I was in dispatch for about a year. I returned to the police department as a police officer. I'm currently a police sergeant supervisor for a shift. When I was captain, I served as supervisor for the patrol unit and the records section. I was responsible for maintaining and monitoring the budget for the police department. I graduated from the FBI National Academy, a 14-week course at Quantico, Virginia, at the FBI Academy. In this training, this training is specifically for command level officers in which a nomination is required to attend. I obtained 14 hours of college credit through the University of Virginia. I have a vested interest in the success of Taos County. I have 4 children and 6 grandchildren who live in this community. Their protection and safety, as well as the protection and safety of all Taoseños, is my priority. Thank you.
Okay, we'll ask both candidates to answer the first 3 questions, of course, one at a time. So, Ron, you're going to be first. What would you describe as being the biggest threat to public safety in our community, and what would you do about it?
The biggest threat to this community, I believe, is drugs. It's become a plague on the community. From the drug problem, you not only have offenders committing drug crimes, you have them committing property crimes to obtain drugs. If elected, I would definitely focus on the drug and property crimes. Maybe we'll begin at the property crime level, identifying users and hopefully getting information on dealers. And I think that strategy would work for Taos County.
Do you want me to repeat the question, or are you all set?
Why don't you just repeat it so the audience will know.
All right, thank you. So, what would you describe as being the biggest threat to public safety in our community, and what would you do about it?
Thank you, Joan. You will find my answer to that on this flyer that was printed up back in January when I began my first campaign. On the back, it talks about what are the critical issues that we're facing together as a community. And on the bottom half of that is how I intend to address those. I don't have time in 2 minutes to talk about all of them, but yes, as my opponent correctly stated, drugs are a huge problem in New Mexico, in Taos County. That is the leading cause of our burglaries and our property crimes and our thefts and our graffiti and other things that take away from the beauty of Taos County. How am I going to combat that? The first thing you're going to see from me is unity amongst law enforcement. I will work very closely and together with state police, Taos police, tribal police, and every other law enforcement agency around the Enchanted Circle. I will bring us together as one entity, and we will share our information, we will share our resources, we will know from one agency to another who we're looking for, what offending vehicle we're looking for, what crimes that we've had, and what those trends are through comp stats and other means of tracking that data. We need to probably understand what is the crime rate here in Taos County. Do you know for the month of July there were over 750 incident report or calls for service taken by the Taos County Sheriff's Department? 75 additional animal control calls for the month of July. 60 crashes were investigated, 1 fatality. 18 of those were serious injuries. It was from alcohol and drugs. Those are pretty staggering numbers for a community of our size. I can bring those resources together. We can fight that, but the number one thing that I'm going to need is I'm going to need the budget to be able to do it. And I think, Joan, that answers your question. That is the most critical thing that we're facing, because we all appreciate that we're in a dwindling economy, and money and resources and government grants simply aren't here like they were 10, 15, 20 years ago. And I'm out of time. Thank you.
Okay, Jerry's going to answer this question first, and then Ron. And this is a question people want to know. Who would you hire as your undersheriff and why? So Jerry and then Ron.
Joan, that question was asked back at the last forum, and unfortunately, my answer still is the same. I don't have anybody. I was entertaining a state police officer that has since made his choice not to join me on the department. So here's what I'm going to do. Starting out, I'm not going to have an undersheriff. And you know what? I don't think I need one necessarily, because I've got myself. I've got my experience, my resources, my ability, my training, my knowledge, and I've run 2 departments before. I've been a chief of police. I have not only monitored the budgets, I've developed those budgets, and I can do that again. I am going to heavily rely on my 2 lieutenants from the Sheriff's Department. And other supervisors and other fine men of the department, such as Deputy Celidon Gallego standing in the back. I'm going to call on them for their experiences through this department, because they've been on the inside and they've seen that, and I will ask for their guidance, and not necessarily telling you that I'm going to follow that, because things will be different. You have my word on that. There will be accountability, there will be responsibility, and it's going to start with me to my constituents, the ones that have voted me into that office to serve this community. So I'm going to rely on Lieutenant Steve Miera for a lot of the daily operations. I'm going to utilize him to his fullest capacity and his tactical abilities. I'm going to rely on Lieutenant Mike Tafoya for his ability to go out and seek for grants. And I don't care if they're only $2,000 or $3,000 grants. We're going to get all of those that we possibly can. And we're going to move our department forward $1 at a time if that's what it takes. So I won't have an undersheriff initially. I hope to have one soon after. I'm going to utilize the funding for that position to try and bring on another investigator into our department, because I think one investigator, Rob Salazar, who's walking in as we speak, what timing on that? He can't keep up by himself. He needs help, and I'm going to give him those resources and tools so he can investigate crimes. Thank you. I'm out of time.
As of yet, I have not selected an undersheriff. I believe there's plenty of talent within the Sheriff's Department and in this community to find and have them apply, and then pick the best person who's going to be qualified. The Sheriff's Department needs the leadership. It'll have my leadership as sheriff, but they also need someone under me to guide them when I'm not there, to ensure that they're going to be on the up and up, on the straight and narrow. Again, there is the talent there. The lieutenants and sergeants, supervisors, they'll be there to help also. There is a lot of talent in the Sheriff's Department. I don't doubt that. I don't put them down. I think that they're capable of doing an outstanding job. The undersheriff is someone who's supposed to take my place when I'm not there. And if I'm going to be out searching for sources of funding through the legislature, there will need to be somebody to supervise. Thank you.
Okay, Ron, you'll answer this question first, and then Jerry. What would be your policy concerning a convicted criminal working as a deputy in your department?
It is my opinion that a convicted criminal has no place in the Sheriff's Department. We are law enforcement. We are supposed to be the upstanding people of this community. We are supposed to be the leaders and the people that people look up to, children, adults. We're supposed to be the ones that they say, that's an upstanding person. He's upholding the laws, not breaking them. If a crime is committed while I'm sheriff by any of my personnel, they'll immediately be, investigation will be begun. I'll look into it. I have training on internal affairs investigations. An investigation will ensue, and action will be taken if need. Thank you.
Yes, please, just so the audience knows the question.
Okay. What would be your policy concerning a convicted criminal working as a deputy in your department?
Thank you. I can sum that up in 5 words. They won't work for me. Okay? But I want to give a little further explanation on that because, Joan, I feel like there's more root to that question and perhaps an undertow of is that going on right now? And the simple answer to that is I don't know because that information and those personnel records have not been openly shared with me. But I have talked to the current sheriff. I have talked to the undersheriff. I've met with the deputies. I've met with the county manager. And as of today, I met with our union representative. Well, not my union representative, but the union representative that I will be working with at the county. And I posed that question to her as well. I'm getting a consistent feedback from all the management and all the leadership throughout the county that there is concern for that and that how will it be addressed in the future. From day one, I've already talked to, and I think I brought this out during my my campaign in the primary, I've talked to Mr. Mark Shea. He works at the Department of Public Safety, and I have asked him to do an audit of our department. I am actually talked with the sheriff about this as well. And after this election's over, being your sheriff-elect, I want to work with him and I want an audit on the sheriff's department training records and their personnel. And I want that to be done by an outside agency, DPS, and I want them to identify what our weaknesses are rather than that coming from me. That way I can work with the human resources manager and the county manager. We can address those or have those addressed before January 1 even comes. And we will move forward with a clean department or with the answers that we have no deficiencies within the department or no criminal behavior or nobody that's carrying a commission or a gun or a badge that shouldn't be. The simple answer is I don't know if it's going on right now. I don't believe it is. I think we do honestly have a quality crew there, and certainly I would never hire anybody in the future. Thank you. How about that for timing?
Okay, for the next 4 rounds, I will draw questions about the department's operation from this envelope. This will be 1 candidate, 1 question, and Jerry, you will have the first question. Oh, it's a long one. Residents of the most rural parts of the county regularly complain that the department only responds to calls and takes reports without doing any follow-up work. What will you do to ensure the department can not only respond to crimes, but solve them as well?
Thank you. I've been working on this issue for several months now. I've worked with Ray Gallegos down at the Penasco Community Center and David Sutton up at the Costilla Community Center. And through the county, who actually owns those facilities. I've secured permission and been blessed with utilizing space in both of those locations to have satellite stations or substations in the exterior of our county. That is so needed. Not only to have the satellite stations, but we can share that resource or that building with emergency management for Taos County as well, should we have an event in the extreme north or the extreme south. Scheduling. I will be able to schedule, based off the personnel, a full staff of personnel, 3 evening shifts a week in the peripheral areas or the outlying communities of Costilla, Amaya, Cerro, Latir, Cuesta, Sunshine Valley in the north, and in the south, the major places, which is Chamizal, Rodarte, and Penasco. There's over 3,000 people that live down in that community, and they deserve police protection. We will give them that by having officers assigned into their community at minimum from the sheriff's office 3 night shifts a week. By being there and cutting down our response times from 47 minutes, which is what it is currently on an overall average, my goal is to have those response times reduced to 10 minutes or less. By also being in those communities on a regular basis, the sheriffs being seen, that's a reduction in crime right there. People are going to see us there. They're going to see us patrolling and being active in that community. That's going to deter crime as well. The last part of that, and I've spoken with Lieutenant Eduardo Martinez, our commander from the Taos State Police District that's stationed here, about sharing resources. So when we're not there, perhaps he can assign somebody there and vice versa. We will coordinate our resources, our scheduling, and our training with all the other law enforcement agencies. Thank you.
Okay, Ron. How will you ensure the county's animal code is enforced with, all right, Andrew wrote this, with bite and not just bark?
As I learned tonight that this may not be an issue, but the animal control may be moving to the, what is it? Another portion of the county.
Code enforcement.
Code enforcement, thank you.
Just here to help you, brother.
Thank you. And I hope you'll always be there for me. So, but if it remains with the Sheriff's Department, they have to take an active part in writing citations, showing up in court. They have to maintain the law, no matter if it's deputies or animal control. If the law says that it's an animal cruelty issue, the animal control will take part in it. They'll issue the citations, do the criminal complaints, whatever they need to do to get these persons held accountable for the animal that they're being cruel to. There needs to be an active part on the community also on identifying those who are being cruel to animals. And those need to be relayed to the animal control, and they need to respond. There's no question, there's no ifs, ands, or buts. There has to be accountability within the animal control and within the department. Thank you.
Okay. So we might as well just go back and forth on this particular round, if you don't mind, okay? Okay, Jerry. The DA's office has long complained that the Sheriff's Department does not provide enough evidence to bring charges against suspects. Is this a fair criticism? If so, how would you improve evidence gathering at the department?
Quite simply, to answer that question with a short answer is through supervision and through training, proper training. The deputies they mean well, and many of them do quality investigations. I've heard time and time again recently that the sheriff's investigator who's seated here tonight has brought well-prepared cases to the prosecutor's office, and that those cases are moving forward because of the time and effort that's been put into those. Perhaps any misconception of other cases, let me just first clarify that I consider myself a pretty darn good investigator. I've been doing this job for 26 years. I've had cases at the district attorney's office that we've struggled with and tried to push through, and I meet resistance. I know I can't change that part, but what I can change is the sheriff's office ability to do our best on every investigation every time. And just like on my flyer, what it says is Taos County deserves a well-trained sheriff's department that knows how to collect the forensic evidence and the fingerprints, and that we get that to the state lab so it can be ran through APHIS, so it can be ran through CODIS, and that we can get the results back, because we all know and appreciate most of the offenders committing these burglaries and these drug crimes and the violence that takes place in Taos and Taos County. It ain't their first rodeo. It ain't their first offense. They're probably in the system, and if we can gather that evidence and get it to the lab, we can probably make a match. I know through my career I've done it a lot. I'm sure my opponent would back me on that statement. The district attorney's office is critical. The police investigate the crime. The district attorney's office prosecutes those offenders. Sometimes there are motions or procedural things that just can't be avoided. Time limitations on our part of getting the witnesses there sometimes are a hindrance. We may not win every case, but by God, I'm going to bring them to them, and we're going to try.
You get a different one.
I get another one?
You get a different one. We'll pull it out of the envelope. Okay. This is for you, Ron. Domestic violence makes many people prisoners in their own homes. How would your department not just protect victims of domestic violence, but prevent it? I'll leave this here for you.
Thank you. Domestic violence is a really big issue with me. Again, it comes down to training officers. Training officers on how to handle domestic violence cases. There's a master instructor, Quentin McShann, who is, I still think, with the state police. I don't know if he's retired or not. But he gives an excellent training for police officers. If not him, somebody else would come into the department and train the deputies on handling domestic violence cases. I would also coordinate with the local CAV on what else we can do as law enforcement in helping victims, getting them into their system, and so they can get help through CAV. The victims should be getting a packet by their deputies and their law enforcement when involved in domestic violence cases. They should be getting a packet with resources that they can turn to. They should be given a safe place. They should be taken by the deputies to a safe place, to a safe location, to CAV, or to another location. And they should be properly documenting the incidents. They should be documenting all domestic violence cases. That way we can identify those cases that are repeat offenders and get them the help they need in reforming. Thank you.
Sorry. Trying to find something down deep. All right, here you go. How bad is the gang problem in Taos County, and what would you do to address it?
The gang problem in Taos and Taos County is not what it was 15 years ago, but it is still very much alive and very well. If you don't believe that, drive around and look at some of the mailboxes and look at some of the graffiti and look at some of the paintings on fences and so forth. Go to your schools, look at at kids' notebooks and so forth. Yeah, it's here. Yeah, it's strong. And yeah, it gives a negative influence to those children. So what am I going to do about it? Officers in the schools. And it's not going to be a school resource officer. It's going to be every shift, every opportunity that we have. We will be at the schools. I will be at the schools. I want to be there. I want to tie in with our principals, our vice principals, our counselors, and our teachers. And I want them to know that we're there to become part of the solution to their problems, not to be part of their problems. I want them to know that they have us as a resource and that we're there to help. And by being in the schools and being active in that role, we can make a difference. We can befriend those children. We can learn and identify the aberrant behavior by simply asking the principal, vice principal, the counselors, those that have worked with those children. We'll take that the step further, just as I have done in my career. And I will talk to that child. I will learn who that child's family is, where they live. I will visit with their parents. I will go to their house. In one particular instance, and I hope I have time to share this, I'm going to talk really fast. I actually identified with a child that had a hygiene issue, had shown up with the same shirt for 3 days, unwashed hair and unbrushed teeth. I talked with that child. I went to the house. I met with the mother. The child had 2 other siblings. They had no running water. They had broken windows in the house. She was behind on the rent, and she walks to the refrigerator and opens the door and shows me that they have no food. The husband, the father of those children, had split town, and she was so embarrassed to reach out for help. I got them in touch with the sources through Children, Youth, and Families. And those kids had a good meal that night because I went and bought it for them. That's the kind of man I am. That's the kind of leadership that I'm going to bring to this department, and that's how we're going to combat that problem.
Okay, Ron. Should the Sheriff's Department take over the Adult Detention Center? Please explain.
I believe the Sheriff's Office should take over the Adult Detention Center. There's been a lot of failings in that area. Abuse of prisoners, lawsuits. That's not acceptable by either detention officer or law enforcement. There is great failings there. There needs to be a background check done on those who are hired. There needs to be evaluations done on the personnel there on a regular basis. Maybe every 6 months at the beginning, and then maybe a year after that, depending on their performance. There's a lot of good people that work there, don't get me wrong. But there needs to be a definite evaluation of the system there, and it needs to be done right. We need to reduce the civil lawsuits within that area. Thank you.
Okay, for you, Jerry. The Sheriff's Department has a reputation as being unwilling to work with other law enforcement agencies. How would you improve those relationships?
Yes, Joan, that reputation is there. I want to stand up for the deputies, the patrol officers, be it state police or the town, because you know what? I've seen it. I've been a part of it. They do work together well. At the administrative level, things are strained and difficult. Lieutenant Martinez, who's standing here today with us, the commander of the Taos State Police District here, Chief David Weaver standing in the back of the room, Chief Gary Left Hand from Taos Tribal, are all friends of mine and all colleagues that I have worked with well. Cuesta will have a police chief. Red River has a police chief. And I'm going to include around the Enchanted Circle, even though it's not Taos County, we see a lot of the same players from Eagle Nest and Angel Fire here in Taos. I'm going to work well with them. And by the way, Angel Fire's police chief is no longer. They now have an interim police chief. His name is Brad McCaslin. He's formerly of the Colfax Sheriff's Department and also a close friend of mine and a fellow instructor that I've called upon to do training for our department in years past. We will have a strong working relationship there. As far as the Sheriff's Department not working well together, that's going to be a thing of the past. You got my word on that. It's already fixed. It's done. I'm going to work very well. We will share our resources, our training, our information, technologies every day. Every day. Thank you.
Okay, this is for you, Ron. Sometimes people who call 911 don't need a sheriff's deputy, but a mental health professional. How would your department ensure those with mental illness or in an emotional crisis get the help they need?
Well, I believe if somebody's calling 911 about a mental health issue, they do need a deputy. Deputy does need to respond. We don't know what we're dealing with. We don't know why they're acting the way they are acting. And we need to a deputy to at least identify what the problem is. Why is this person acting this way? What, is he on drugs? Is it a mental health issue? Is he a danger to himself or is he a danger to others? A deputy needs to respond. Once they are identified, they need to be either transported by ambulance if they're nonviolent, or transported by the deputy if violent to the hospital so that they can be treated and a mental health professional called so they can get treatment. Holy Cross Hospital has been inundated with mental health people, with people with mental health issues. The last few months, it seems like. They're using up a lot of resources. What I'd like to see is a facility for these mental health issues and for the alcohol issues that we have in our community. Right now, we're finding these alcoholics and they're laying down on the ground. We call an ambulance. They're taken to the hospital. Again, they're using up resources. That hospital is just inundated with these kinds of issues, and they need to treat people who are sick, physically sick. So if we can get a facility together where we can maintain these, get them treated, make sure they're healthy enough, put them in a facility, and get them the treatment, and get them into detox, get them into to facilities where they can get treated.
Okay, now we come to questions that directly concern each candidate. These are the toughest questions that we're going to ask tonight. And for Jerry, the New Mexico Supreme Court Disciplinary Board is investigating the district attorney and his top prosecutor for issuing subpoenas without a judge. One such subpoena was used to obtain evidence in an investigation you led as a lieutenant at the Taos Police Department. Your name is on it. Can you explain?
Absolutely. You're right. My name is on more than just one of those subpoena duces tecums that were prepared. As an investigator, we followed what we thought was the proper procedure for obtaining information. The one you're referring to, I believe, is the one that was served at Holy Cross Hospital and I needed the drug and alcohol toxicology report on that particular case in order to move forward with it. I did prepare the subpoena duces tecum for records, information. I did present it to, some to Robin Sims and some to Emilio Chavez, the senior trial prosecutor. And after their review, they signed them. I had no idea that they didn't have the authority to do that. They didn't either. and in good faith, they were issued so that we could do our jobs and gather information to put criminals in jail where they belong. So, I don't like the ruling that came from Judge Paternoster on that, but I respect Judge Paternoster's ruling on that because I know that man, and unfortunately, he probably is correct on that. It'll be a couple of years before we know for sure. But we now know from that case that stems from a series of subpoenas that were issued on the armed robbery that happened at this facility that we're in right now. And we do know the proper procedures for that, and we will follow that. We will never make that mistake again. It was an unintentional mistake in the first place, and several law enforcement officers that were progressive in doing their jobs were preparing subpoena duces tecums and taking them to the district attorney's office, seeking out a prosecutor, explaining their reason for needing that or their probable cause, and they were being granted, and we were going and serving them on the business or the hospital or whomever to obtain that information. We now know we have to have a grand jury seating or go through the district court judge. That's what I will do, and that's how we will never make that mistake again. Thank you.
Okay, Ron. If you were interested in serving as Taos County Sheriff, why did you only step forward as a candidate after the primary election?
Well, there was a candidate, Rick Trujillo, and he had been trying for several years to try to be the Taos County Sheriff. I felt in my heart at that time that it wasn't right. This was his dream, and he passed away. I was going to give Rick that opportunity to try. He deserved it. But, like I said, he passed away. It was my turn to step up, and that's what I've done. I believe in this community. I believe in the Taos County Sheriff's Department. I believe in the Taos Police Department. I believe in the state police. I trust in everyone who's got a vested interest in this community. My son, Ronald Jr., is a New Mexico State police officer here in Taos. My son Jacob was a Taos Police Department officer. It's time. It was my time to step up and say, I'm going to take this job on. I'm going to take it head on. I'm not going to look back, and I'm going to fight for my county. Thank you.
Okay, Jerry. You spent more than 20 years with the Red River Marshal's Office. You're a resident of Red River. Nearly all of your campaign donors are from Red River. Should voters be concerned you're not better acquainted with the rest of Taos County?
No, absolutely. They shouldn't be concerned about that whatsoever because they've seen me. They've seen my name. Not even just during the primary and now the general election, where I've worn holes in the shoes or in the soles of my shoes going out and meeting the people. I know these people. I know our community. I know the multicultural environment and what that means to this community. I care about Taos County. I care about northern New Mexico because this is my home. Make no mistake about that. This is my home too. This is where I'm going to live the rest of my days and where I will be buried in the Red River Cemetery. Hopefully not soon. But no, they have nothing to worry about. Yes, some of my donors, many of my donors are from Red River. Those are people that know me the best because I served and worked in that community for 22 years. Joan, you'll also notice, and one particular thing was omitted from that, I didn't have very many donors. I did not go out and solicit donations for my campaign. And why didn't I do that? Because I don't want to be indebted to anyone. So I didn't go ask for their money. I asked for their support. I asked for their vote. I asked for their feedback on what they want to see in their next sheriff. I listened to this community. I researched the problems that they brought forward, and I verified those, and that it became part of my platform and what I am going to fix as your next sheriff. No, they have nothing to worry about. Yes, I'm going to stay living in Red River, but you're also going to see me wearing the same uniform as my deputies much of the time, and you're also going to see me in the outlying areas of our community working those satellite stations and developing the intel and the relationship with those communities and those businesses and those people, because I want to know what's going on up there, and I want to become part of their solution, not part of their problem. Thank you.
Okay, Ron, you have worked in law enforcement for decades, but have not run a law enforcement agency. Why should voters trust you to serve as an effective administrator?
As I said in my opening statement, I was a captain. I was appointed captain in March of 2003. I retired in January of 2004. So in that time, I was given the title of assistant chief. I did run a department when the chief wasn't there. Those were my duties. I helped maintain the budget. I didn't develop the budget, but neither did the chief. It was done by the council. Just like the county's budget, it's developed by the commission. We have our own input. So my input is going to be that we get more money. We need the resources. We need the officers. But I think we need to prove ourselves first. They don't just hand out money. It has to be documented. You have to show that there's a need. You have to show how many reports have been taken, how many cases have been taken on, how many cases have been solved. We can do that. I can do that as a leader. I've done it. Thank you.
Okay, well, we have one last question before we do your closing statements. And Jerry, you'll go first. Congratulations, you've been elected. What are the 3 most important things you will have accomplished 1 year after taking office? And Ron, I will say the same thing to you. Oh, okay.
Would I go answer this question? Okay. I guess you were listening during our interview for endorsement, right? Because I told you, I think, about my 90-day, my 1 year, my 5-year plan. And for my second term, I'm already starting to think along those lines. Immediately we're going to develop, I will develop, and we will have implemented a policy and procedures manual that is up to date and is current and is enforceable and will give us accountability to you, the constituents, to the voters that are going to elect me as your next sheriff. That's first and foremost. Secondly, and equally and just as important, is you're going to see the relationship between the other police agencies and the sheriff's department strengthened and built to withstand the storms of time. Thirdly, you will see come to pass within the first 90 days that we will have the satellite stations, substations, functional. They will be operational. It will be a place that we can meet people, that we can do interviews, and that we can sit down and utilize a computer. There'll be a restroom that we can utilize as well. So we can stay in those communities when we're assigned there and have that concentrated patrol effort, which is going to reduce crime by high visibility, and it's going to reduce our response times to the goal of 10 minutes or less in those outlying communities, down considerably from what it is now. Many, many other things are going to come to pass within that first year. You're going to see partnerships formed with every organization that'll have me there, whether it be the Rotary, the Lions, the Big Brothers, Big Sisters, the Amateur Radio Club, the Community or Chamber of Commerce, Community Against Violence, Crime Stoppers, and especially our schools. You're going to see forums put on probably in this room or the county complex where we're going to help work with the people and the businesses and teach them how to protect themselves from fraud, identity theft, things like that. You're going to see us active at the ancianos, the senior centers. You're going to see us in a whole new light, and we will be an agency that you are proud of under my leadership and direction. Thank you.
And I'm going to say the same thing to you, Ron. Congratulations, you've been elected. What are the 3 most important things you will have accomplished 1 year after taking office?
With the help of the community, I would hope to have at least 2 more investigators. I'd like to see that. We need to get these crimes solved. We need to identify who's committing these crimes. I would like to see, again, the outlying communities and the interior communities all serviced with reduced response times. I would like to see, with the help of the commission, better patrol cars. Our fleet, or the fleet of the Taos County Sheriff's Office, is dwindling. Their cars have got mileage on them. Our transport officers are wondering if they're going to make it back. So I would like to see, with the help of the commission, with the help of the community, with their input, I'd like to see them contact their commissioners and see if we can get all of us together to develop this community into a safer place. Thank you.
Okay, the questions are over with. You can take a breath, deep breath, okay? But now we'll have the candidates make their closing statements, and Ron, you'll go first, and then Jerry.
Again, I have 25 years law enforcement experience. I have the leadership experience. I know the people of this community. I've lived in this community since I was 12 years old. I graduated from Taos High School. My mother's graduated from Taos High School. My sons have graduated from Taos High School. My daughter-in-law from Cerro. My in-laws from Taos. I am from here. I am your candidate. I have, like I said, a vested interest in being your sheriff. I have my children, I have my grandchildren here attending schools. I'd like to see deputies in the schools. I'd like to see officers, more officers, town officers in schools. I'd like to see a coordinated effort between all the agencies that come to Taos, whether it's Colfax County or Rio Arriba County, northern New Mexico. It's our home. We have to come together as a community with our politicians, with our commission, with our city councilors, and urge them for more officers, for units, for patrol units. Thank you.
This race, as others, has been about party, and as you know, I'm the lifelong Democrat. It's been about politics. It's been about who can get along, who can't get along, who holds the purse strings, who makes the budget, who does those things. We're at the point now where it needs to come down to one final thing, and that's who's going to get the job done. And I'm that person. I'm going to get in there and I'm going to get her done. And you got my word on that, because I bring the leadership and I bring the experience. I've been the chief. I have developed the budget, and I have fought for that budget that I developed with the council that I used to serve. And I make my points and I show the justifications, and it passes and it goes through. That's how an effective leader works. And that's what my experience is going to bring to this county. You're going to see cooperation between not only the sheriff's office and other law enforcement, but through the other public safety entities. You're going to see us backing the fire department when they need traffic control to keep vehicles off of their back. We're going to be there for them. You're going to see us showing up to the critical EMS calls. You're going to see us monitoring those type of calls that aberrant or dangerous environments might exist, and you're going to see us showing up first to protect them, because quite honestly, they're the ones that's going to save our tail when we get in a bind out there. We're going to have that strong working relationship. We're going to have a policies and procedures manual developed, and I'm already working on that with the Association of Counties and with the New Mexico Sheriff's Association, Mr. Jack Levick, and we know what it's going to take to have that quality policy and procedures manual to hold accountable our personnel and ourselves to you, our constituents. We're going to do the partnerships. We're going to work strong with Crime Stoppers. We're going to have an investigations unit, and we're going to have a crime scene vehicle. One of the old ambulances is going to get converted to a crime scene response vehicle. You're going to see that in your community. We're going to have training both in-house and outside so that everybody is better prepared to serve this community. And I wished I could go on and on, but I can't. I'll be right back there at that table. Please come see me. Thank you.
Well, I would say our candidates deserve a big round of applause. And thank you, gentlemen, for participating in our forum. I'm not done. You have to sit down. Okay. A few things. Early voting has begun. You can vote weekdays 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. at the county complex, and Saturday, November 1st. There are also alternate sites at the Old Armory on Blueberry Hill, Cuesta Village Hall, and Penasco Community Center. And I believe that's Saturdays until November 1st, 10 a.m. to 6 p.m.
Just the one Saturday, John.
Oh, just the one Saturday? Okay.
November 1st, 10 to 6 on that day.
And Tuesdays and Fridays, are they doing that?
There are cards at the back.
Okay, there's cards at the back, but you always go to the county complex. The Taos News will publish its endorsements for all races, ballot questions, and constitutional amendments in this Thursday's paper. And finally, we have the room until 7 p.m. So if there's a question you want to ask one of the candidates up close and personal, please do. Thank you for coming, and thank you for your interest. Good evening.
I've been asking about that.